Do we not ask ourselves, how can we heal the world? How can we look at everything that's going on in the world around us and create a better space, uplift it, raise its field, raise its vibration? Do we not also ask the same things about our own lives? Do we not ask ourselves that same question? How can I heal that which in me limits, that which in me is held back, and create a better future? Create the vibration and the field of that which is calling me, that which is drawing me higher, inviting me into expansion. In the film Every 3 Seconds, which is a social action film, they dive into this question of how can we make a difference. And one of the things that I think is most powerful about this film is that we can oftentimes assume that to make a difference, we have to be huge people. We have to be somehow empowered beyond a level that we see around us. We have to somehow be special to some degree, that we can point out that there is a light in us or in someone that is a transformation agent that is greater than other lights that are seen. Well, this film debunks that myth. This film looks at regular people, everyday people, normal people who have taken a step forward, just one step, and then another step, and then another step. And through that, they have engaged in a universal support network, a universal infrastructure, a divine design that has uplifted not only them, but created a field around them of expansiveness and enlarged their territory. But these stories of power didn't start out grandiose, they didn't start out large, they didn't start out loud or transformative. They started, and this is the good news, they started with something that is so refreshing, not something that we have to strive for or act in an amazing capacity to achieve and accomplish. They started through receiving. They started through an idea coming to them. Is that not a relief? If there is something for you to do, if there is something for me to do to heal the world, to heal in life, to create a better future, you don't have to look for it, you don't have to strive for it, you don't have to coerce it or conduct it or create it. It will come to you. It will be born in you. In fact, it's probably in the very fabric of your nature, was born in you before you even incarnated. And if we are just open with our hearts and our minds and not closed down, we will feel it come upon us. And we find when we take this journey that we are supported beyond measure. That all of the things that we had to do in our minds to create, we recognize are done for us, in us, through us, and as us. And that process, that walking, is an initiation of sorts. An initiation into a different plane of being that the master teacher called the kingdom of heaven, I believe, a plane of being that was a different realm of activity. And from this realm of activity, and only through this realm of activity, do real things happen. In Unity, we are celebrating this week World Day of Prayer. It's our high holy day. Some people say it's their favorite holiday. They take off the day and they grab that schedule of events and they go through the activities of World Day of Prayer. But wherever people are around the globe, they hold this prayer consciousness with us as a spiritual community, as a spiritual light. This is also the time of Campaign for Consciousness, the annual 40-day affirmative prayer campaign to create a consciousness around a social action vision, a social action goal. There were two people, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, many years ago here at Grounds at Unity, here on planet Earth, that had a similar initiation into a new field of activity. And they got what was theirs to do. And what was theirs to do was to start a great educational movement that transformed lives through affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer wasn't so well known at that time. And I'm sure that this vision was not something that Charles and Myrtle just sat there and thought about and came up with all on their own and thought, I'm going to build this sanctuary where in 2015 these people will be sitting, talking about the principles, talking about my healing, talking about the intuition that came to me, talking about the light that I shared, and that I paved the way for positive, progressive thinking on this planet. I don't think they were thinking about all the influences that they would have, all the influence. But they acted on what came to them. Simple. What came to them personally, what descended upon them, what welled up within them, they acted on it. They took a step and they moved forward. And they ideated something that actually transforms everything. And they said it did not begin with them. It began with the master teacher. And we know it's practiced in saints and sages throughout the ages. But it's this idea that consciousness is a thing, that prayer is a thing, and that it is a powerful thing, and that it is the foundation of everything. And that is the ground on which we were born in unity. Now, this type of prayer, this affirmative prayer that is in unity, is not an arousing God to action. It's not a wishing prayer. It's not a begging prayer. It's a different kind of prayer. Ernest Wilson said, your prayer should not be a wish, but a conviction. Your prayer should not be a wish, but a conviction. So in unity, the foundation of prayer is not used to change God. It's not used to shift an entity out there to ask it to give more, to show more, to act more. Prayer in unity is a conditioning of consciousness. It is knowing that there is one mind, a universal mind, a God mind, call it whatever you want to call it, or call it nothing. It cares not what we call it, but it is an activity, a field of absolute intelligence, a field of vibrational energy, a field of creation, a field of love that is all givingness itself, that is all itself. Anything that we could conceive of, it is the higher order of that and beyond. And that in fact, we are one with this mind. We are one with this Godness. That we couldn't separate it from us if we tried. There would be nowhere to cut a cord or to cut it off. In fact, in the sayings gospel, in the Gnostic gospel of Thomas, in saying 22, Jesus was asked about the kingdom of heaven. And he saw babies nursing. And he said to his disciples, these nursing babies are like those who enter the kingdom. They said to him, well, then shall we become as babies? The master teacher explained. And this is the piece on you can't cut it off. You can't cut the cord. Imagine for a moment seeing a nursing child and a mother. And that activity of life, that mystical, miraculous activity of life. Really pause for a moment into what happens in that activity. The sourcing, the unity, the bond. The master teacher said, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, when you make eyes in place of an eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you will enter. Then we will enter. So when we are harmonized in consciousness, when we are in unity, when we are at one with our source, when we are at one-ment, atonement, when we are in that state of consciousness, the inside becomes like the outside. So that affirmative prayer is the conditioning to bring into harmony the inside and the outside, to bring the oneness of consciousness into fruition, into activity, so that we may change our minds, that we may awaken our thinking, so that we recognize the concept and the practice that our thoughts are prayers and we are always praying, that we begin to listen to what we're saying and we seek the highest consciousness and we call forth its activity through us. This was the greatest gift that the Unity founders felt like they could give this educational movement we call Unity, was to teach that consciousness, to teach that awareness of true abundance, that it is always there. And it is through that we become agents of change. So how can we change the world, our inner world or our outer world? How can we change the world? Because when we begin to help ourselves, like we do in Unity, when we begin to help ourselves, we have this benevolent desire to help the world. And in fact, the two are one, are they not? We cannot help ourselves without helping every generation that comes next. And we can't, in fact, heal anything outside of us unless it is healed first in us, unless the wholeness is known first in us. Because otherwise, if we think we are, we're simply manipulating the outside circumstances. The litmus test on whether or not change is happening, whether or not transformation is happening when I am serving or when I am helping, is whether or not, in the absence of my presence, there is still a change. So in Unity, we teach giving a hand up, not a hand out. A hand up. Because when we give a hand up, we have to climb ourselves, do we not? We have to climb ourselves, and when we climb ourselves, we shift our consciousness, and we actually transform the real and the true reality that is existent. In our world and in our beings, there are systems and there are structures that shift what we see, that shift the amount of suffering that we have to be present to, that shift the circumstances or the what is that our eyes see, but that don't transform. Because if there is an organization, if there is a system, if there is a business, and this is not a criticism, because anything that heals, anything that helps, anything that loves is a good thing, but transformation happens when there is a system that is created that when it leaves, when it shuts down, there has been a shift in consciousness, and something that was an ill, something that was being created has actually been changed at its causal level. And that's real transformation, is it not? Has anyone been a helper before and recognized that you helped and you helped and you helped, and all of a sudden you woke up and you go, ooh, that wasn't helping, that was enabling. That was just pushing off, putting off, padding from the inevitable, which was the spiritual growth, the growth in consciousness, the growth at a causal level. So we're here, are we not, to do only that which truly transforms, that which truly changes? Because otherwise we're just shifting the pieces, we're just shifting the puzzle so that it's not so uncomfortable to look at. Have we done that in our own lives? Just shifted the puzzle, shifted the pieces? Okay, now it doesn't look as nutty. Now it doesn't look as messy. But until a change happens in consciousness, through affirmative prayer, through conditioning of the mind, through shifting the cause, we have not transformed. We have not created change. We may have enabled, we may have caused temporary relief, but saving is different from transforming. Changing the outcome does not change anything. Changing what we cause is where all change happens. And that's the foundation of Unity, is looking at the cause level Wayne Dyer, when addressing who we are, said this: consider that all human beings have within them the same essence of consciousness, and that the process of creativity and genius are attributes of human consciousness. Therefore, genius is a potential that lives within you and every other human being. This is the potential that lives within you and every other human being. So how do we affect change in the world? We affect change in the world and change in ourselves by believing in that potential, by believing that that is the fabric of our nature, by believing in it so clearly that we don't have to teach, we don't have to press things in, we don't have to shift, but we can lift up, we can offer a hand. And we know because we know what we're looking at. We know who and whose we're looking at. We know we are looking at unlimited potential. We are looking at infinite source. We make lasting change by creating it first in mind. The Buddha said the mind is everything. The mind is everything. So when we believe in another's power, when we believe in who another is, and we believe in our collective power together, we change the world. In the movie Every 3 Seconds, there was an amazing woman, Ingrid Monroe. She was retired and she lived in Kenya and began microfinance institutions where she would give out microloans to transform people's lives. She went against the system and she took people that were robbers, people that had lives that were not leading to good, that were leading to suffering. Maybe they were ingrained in those lives. But she saw the divine potential within them. And she did not give them something to put a Band-Aid on what was happening in their lives. She gave them a microfinance loan. And from that, she gave them her belief and her support and her faith, so that they could take that and turn it into something for themselves, so that they could step up and step out of what they were in, the limitation they were in, so that they began through that to know themselves. Because when we know ourselves, when we begin to meet ourselves, we recognize, do we not, that we are wondrously made. That we are wondrously made. And when that is seen in us, it calls us forth. Wayne Dyer said that we are a human bulb attached to the great universal current. And he shared this passage of Orison Marden from the book Making Life a Masterpiece. This passage goes like this: we get light from the electric current in proportion to the number of candle powers in the electric bulb. The filament in a 4-power candle lamp cannot take off the light of a 16-candle power lamp. We are human bulbs attached to the great universal current of force and power. And the light which we give off depends on the candle power of our lamps. Many people go through life with a dim 4-candle light, but not because they lack power to generate stronger light, but because they never learned how to express their power. Why be a candle when you can be an arc light? Why be a candle when you can be an arc light? We are here to be a light. We are here to be agents of transformation. We are here to birth everything in consciousness first and let it outpicture in our world. So what do we do then as unity people when we see something that is lacking, when we see something that is ill, when we see something that seems like error? What do we do? Do we spread stories about it? Do we chat about it? Do we worry about it? Do we activate it on a dramatic level? Do we woe is me about it? Do we crucify ourselves about it? Do we crucify others about it? No. Not in unity. Our unity practice is to get clear and to pray about it. Amen? To hold in consciousness, to hold in clarity, to hold in conviction, and to condition the mind, condition the being, condition the environment so that a new birth, so that a positive birth, so that a great good can be birthed from whatever it is we're looking at. So many of us have had the thoughts probably about education, that there's beautiful parts in our education system in our world, not just for children, but for adults. And then others of us have had thoughts that there are things that we're getting worried about, no? Creativity being pressed out of schools, arts budgets being cut, right? Institutions that aren't teaching, but rather that are teaching more than educating. Teaching being pushing in information, and educating being creating learners, creating thinkers. Generating what's already there, right? Affirming what's already there. And so how we presence this conversation in our world and in our systems, how we presence it makes a difference. So are we willing to stand in a different vision? Are we willing to take those things we see and go, I don't want something that presses down intuition. I want something that lifts it up and expands it. I want something that does not teach that we're limited, but that in fact activates our unlimited potential. I want something and a system that doesn't nurture people that need approval and that are fitting a special box, showing up in a special way just so that they can get approval. I want to nourish that which seeks its own self-approval and knows where to go to get that self-approval. So in unity, when we have these stories, when we have these ideas, when we see limitations starting to press out, we empower, do we not? So would you join me again in closing for the Campaign for Consciousness affirmation? Will you join me in holding this vision as we know the universal current being strong within all beings? That we know every being from age birth to age light form deserves this universal education from the true source of their being. So let us know that together we are powerful. Let us know that together our consciousness provides a hand up as we say this affirmation. We believe in cultivating greatness. Through innovative education, we co-create an environment that supports and nourishes innate wisdom, natural creativity, and emotional intelligence, and deep resourcefulness. We release paradigms and teaching systems that restrict imagination, inhibit intuition, and create conditioning that limits potential and obstructs empowerment. We nurture self-sufficiency, inner confidence, and mindful living by engaging the expansive mind present within. Together, we establish the conditions that foster conscious children and enlightened individuals. And so it is. Namaste.